Right, so we are going to make a start. Anybody that's joining us, please drop in the chat where you're in the world you're coming from. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar, Alumni in Action, Leveraging Finance for Social Impact. We've got people joining us from Turkey and from the Red Cross. Hello, welcome. Switzerland, the UK, Morocco, Kenya. Lovely. Hong Kong, New York, very diverse group, which is lovely. We've got a lovely diverse group of panelists for you today, so welcome. So today we are going to be joined by guest alumni from our executive education impact finance programs here at the University of Oxford, Saïd Business School. So the webinar will last about an hour. And it will be recorded, so it will be sent out to anybody that's registered so that they can follow up next week and they can view the recording at that time as well. So you will have an opportunity to view it again if you miss anything in the meantime. So there will be some Q&A time with each speaker at the end of each of their sessions, as well as at the end of the webinar. So please put any questions that you may have in the Q&A section rather than in the chat. Hopefully this webinar will supply you with a unique opportunity to hear directly from our alumni about transformative impact of our programs on their careers and any innovative projects that they've been working on since. So my name is Tonielle Ballard. I'm the program consultant supporting the Impact Measurement Program coming up in June 2025, as well as the Impact Finance Innovations Program, which will be running next again in November of next year. So that one's just wrapped up. The Impact Investing Program is also part of this portfolio, and that is led by my colleague and sales manager, Carrie Reed. So I'll pass over to Carrie to say a quick.
Thanks so much, Till, and it's great to see so many people joining us today on this webinar, which I hope proves useful in starting your executive education journey. So my name is Carrie Reed, and I'm one of the program sales managers, and as Neil mentioned, I lead on the Impact Investing Program as well. So it's great to see you all and answer your questions.
So sorry about that. Here is our QR codes. If you do want to reach out at any point, please drop us a message on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to connect. So we are delighted to have with us today three of our esteemed alumni, Cordell, Susie, and Ed, who have attended between them three of our current Impact Finance programs. So I will now pass over to our 2023 Impact Finance Innovations alumni, Cordell Jacks, to introduce himself and tell us a bit about his work. I just want to say as a reminder, if you do have any questions for our alumni panel, please do put them in the Q&A, and I'll now hand over to Cordell.
Thank you, Tonielle. Carrie, great to see you again, and thanks for having us here. My name is Cordell Jacks, and I'm the CEO and general partner of a Canadian-based impact fund known as Regenerative Capital Group. I'm coming to you this morning from Vancouver Island, where I live on the west coast of Canada, traditional home of the Salish people, the Comox First Nations, the Wewakam and Wewakai people, and Hamalko as well. I'd like to share a little bit about my journey to the genesis of what is Regenerative Capital Group, as well as my involvement in the Impact Finance Innovation Program. To share with you, about 2.5 years ago, an old mentor of mine came to me, and he had been acquiring small, medium enterprises across Canada in various sectors for the last 20 years. He'd buy these companies, he'd put young operators in place, and he had grown them to pretty successful companies, cultures, and exits. And after a very successful of his businesses, he had given away almost $10 million in philanthropy and was very unhappy with the impact that his philanthropic dollars were having. And so he came to me to support him in the creation of an impact thesis. And at the beginning of this journey, we didn't know what that truly meant. We didn't know if we were giving away money, if we were going to be investing capital. And after a bit of a discovery period, I said, what you've been doing these last 20 years or so of buying SMEs and putting young operators in place, there's a name for that. Really based in the US, a lot of the Ivy League business schools have been growing search fund programs or entrepreneurship through acquisition programs. So an alternative entrepreneurial career path rather than launching a risky venture and having 70 or 80% failure rates. This was training these entrepreneurs to go out and buy established SMEs, small, medium enterprises that were looking for ownership succession and to grow them to fantastic companies. I said, look, this is a fantastic asset class. It's really nascent and emergent here in Canada, and I don't think many have really used this as the full potential of what this asset class could be in terms of impact. And so I'd like to build you an impact-first investment fund around this idea. And he said, great, let's do it. We'll build an impact fund, an accelerator program around this. And this was the start of Regenerative Capital Group. We quickly came to a thesis around regenerative impacts. So not just looking at sustainability or net zero, not just looking at doing less harm or restoring things to the way they were, but ultimately looking at regeneration. How can we put net positive impact into the health and wealth of the communities and environments that our enterprises and our value creation strategies, wherever they touch. And so we had the start of a thesis for what is now Regenerative Capital Group. The problem is I've never run a fund before. I'm not a finance guy in background. And so all of a sudden this great idea was a daunting challenge, and I needed to learn at a rocket ship rate. It is part of that learning process. Someone said, you should take a look at this book called Adventure Finance, written by a woman named Ani Patton-Power. And I read this book, and it started teaching me about catalytic and blended finance models. And quickly I said, geez, this is fantastic. I need to find this Ani woman. And was put in touch with her, and lo and behold, she is the director of the Impact Finance Innovation Program. And quickly, I had to sign up for this program to learn more about some of the most creative models that are happening in innovative fund creation, in innovative financing mechanisms. And lo and behold, Ani was pretty excited. She said, look, we know the search fund model. We're waiting to see more use this asset class in a more impactful and meaningful way. Definitively, you should come to our program. I think we have some things that would be supportive in the creation of what you're doing. Now, I took part in this program just over a year ago. I guess it was the end of October at Oxford. And first of all, it blew all expectations away. I came into this program with a pretty strong thesis. We were building this ship as we were flying it, meaning that we had already recruited our first cohort of acquisition entrepreneurs. They were starting their search for SMEs, and we didn't have any of the fund structuring put together. We were truly going to structure this and capital raise it at the same time. I would say that first and foremost, there's three core faculty that the program had. Ani, who is just a badass wizard in all things impact finance. Karim, who was there to really lead the impact measurement and management program. And Chintan Panchal, who is a lawyer from the US and really helped set up a lot of innovative fund structuring and impact-linked compensation work. Right off the bat, we knew that we had some pretty interesting challenges by taking a regenerative approach to impact and finance. And that really meant some challenges in how we measured impact, not just from single reductionist thematic categories of decarbonization or circularization or DEI or JEDI efforts in this regard, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. We needed to, yes, address a lot of these issues that are at the core of systemic polycrisis issues, but also transcend those to look at what are systems catalyzing efforts around the stakeholders of these small, medium enterprise institutions, and how do we translate that to impact investors who are pretty rigid when it comes to their investment committees, when it comes to their tick box thematic approaches of where they've decided, either as foundations, impact investors, or wherever the capital may be coming from, how do we get them to see beyond what has been a somewhat traditional impact investing and sometimes somewhat industrial mindset towards impact. And Karim was able to really quickly support us in widening the lens to get beyond some of these rigid frameworks and to help build a narrative arc around what we were doing around systems catalyzation, systemic investing, and regeneration. And so that was hugely helpful for us in starting to open those conversations up about how we might play with others who truly did want to see impact in the world, just may not have been at the level that we were looking at. I would say, secondly, Chintan Panchal, who is again faculty there in the legal side, really started to help us look at some of the best practices that have been done in fund management and fund design. And this is where I will honestly say the Impact Finance and Innovation Program, although not being a finance guy, turned me into a bit of a fund nerd, looking at the different levers and mechanisms that we can design creatively these investment vehicles to leverage impact to its greatest extent, just excited me. I just saw the creativity, the ability to design, the ability to work with other stakeholders, investors, and partners to make win-win situations come through, that this was an exciting space for me to finally have interest in diving in deep in finance. And I'll say that we actually continue to work with some of the faculty, particularly with Karim and with Chintan. Chintan has helped us structure the legal frameworks and documents around what is now impact-linked compensation. And I'll just say a word about this, because this was new research that was coming out through the faculty last year as we were attending the program. And impact-linked compensation really looked at about 200 investment funds around the world and how they ensured that there was no possibility for greenwashing, or in our case, regenerative washing, by structuring our funds so that all incentives were aligned to make sure that the value creation strategies we were looking at couldn't be shortcutted for short-term profiteering or greenwashed or ESG'd into compliance tick boxes as we've seen before. Ultimately, we set the structure so all vesting equity carry at the fund level, meaning the profits at the fund level, could only be had when we truly hit the impact targets. And so being able to design a fund around these mechanisms and to really say, like, we are putting our money where our mouth is, we can demonstrate market rate returns, we can demonstrate alignment across all diagonals, all vertices of what we're doing towards the bigger change and the bigger impact we want to see. It was truly life-changing. It was truly a way to open this sometimes stuffy, sometimes complex world of impact finance into a very creative act. And it really gave me the tools to come into a lot of conversations with a lot more confidence. I would say I came to Oxford with a lot of imposter syndrome, going like, I don't know how I got myself into this. How am I running a new impact investment fund? How am I going to pull this all together? To walking out of Oxford, being able to go, okay, I know enough to be dangerous here. I know enough to be more than dangerous. I know I don't know it all this year. If we figured it out, someone would have done it. How do we walk into these conversations with LP investors, with institutional partners, with other ecosystem partners to really design something that's for the greater good? And I would say that would be one of the biggest benefits coming out of the program was that confidence to be able to go in and to be able to learn for myself in a way that's with enough grounding to know how to implement and how to put this all together. The last piece I'll say here is the other huge benefit has been the people that I met through Oxford. The faculty, obviously, who have just been incredible resources and continue to be to this date, and the alumni that I met. I think there was 28 folks in our program, somewhere around that number. I've probably stayed in contact with 3/4 of that group, and will likely be in contact with the other quarter as things come up. But we've just been here to help each other. You know, we introduce each other to networks. We open up anything that's needed. Anyone that comes to me through the program, I'm there for them, and it's been vice versa the same. Anytime I've called on anyone for support in what we're doing, you're with a cohort of people who are all there for the same reasons, for the same impact, and the same, you know, business as a force for good, or institution as force for good work. And so we're all there to support each other. And those networks have opened up vast other networks for us. And Carrie and I were in Amsterdam at the Global Impact Investing Network event a few weeks ago. We're seeing other folks who are just, oh, can I introduce you to so-and-so? So the network, the curriculum, and then the experience of being in Oxford, just incredible. Being steeped in the history of all of this incredibly good work, and being now at the forefront was just life-changing. So I'll pause there. I may be over time, so I'll turn it back over to the team and see if we have any minutes left for questions.
That's great, Cordell. Thank you. It looks like we've had a few comments just saying hello as a friend. So please put the comments in the chat, and any questions that you may have addressed to Cordell or Susie or Ed, please put in the Q&A. I don't know if there's any questions that have come up yet, but absolutely feel free to answer those as and when they come. I just wanted to ask Cordell, before we pass over, you know, what advice do you think you would give to those who are about to start their applications for the Impact Finance Innovations program?
Yeah, I would say definitively, I know everyone's busy, but if you can, read Ani's book, Adventure Finance, before going into the program. But if you're considering going into the program, I would just say, just do it. You know, I know everyone's busy, costs, flights. The team at Oxford was incredibly helpful. I was in the midst of a very busy period. They were just incredibly welcoming, accommodating, up and going. So definitively just do it. I promise it will be very worthwhile for you.
Great, thank you so much. So now I am going to hand over to our 2023 Impact Measurement alumna, Susie, to introduce herself and tell us about her work. And again, if you have any questions throughout Susie's presentation as well, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. Over to you, Susie.
Thanks, Tonielle. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I felt very connected with some ideas that Cordell mentioned. Well, I am Peruvian. I am currently living in Lima after 4 years living in the Sacred Valley in Cusco, just an hour away from Machu Picchu. I have a Master of Science in International Development Studies from the University of Amsterdam, and I have a bachelor degree in Business Administration from the University of Pacifico here in Peru. I have 15 years of professional experience, the last 8 as a manager in companies, nonprofit organizations, and public institutions. And I am also a university professor and researcher affiliated to 2 local universities. Currently, I have 2 roles. My full-time role is being an institutional manager at SOI. SOI is a business movement formed by CEOs committed to work personally and collectively with integrity for a prosperous Peru for all. And also I am a consultant for IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which is a UN agency exclusively dedicated to transforming agriculture, rural economies, and food systems that invest in rural people who are always or often the world's poorest and most vulnerable. As Tonielle mentioned, I attended the Oxford Impact Measurement Program on 2023. I think it was May or June. And from there, I have started or promoted some projects. I want to share 4. First, in SOI Association, as I mentioned, is my full-time job. And since last year, I have been helping to develop the theory of change of the institution and all its programs as a first step for our impact measurement and management. As mentioned, it is a business association and relatively new, just 4 years of created. And here, normally, an IMM approach do not come from local NGOs. because they are busy like doing. It usually comes from international cooperation or international NGOs. And certainly this was also new to the business world. So there was a lot of strategic internal sensibilization to see its relevance. And after a year of work, we have our theories of change and the board decision to give priority to IMM and open a direction of impact and knowledge management that I will lead next year. That was also possible because we were selected as an implemented agency for the first Pay for Results program in Peru that is financed by the Inter-American Development Bank. The second experience or project that I want to share is from IFAD. I started working there in March from this year. And I work on the impact evaluation and knowledge management for the projects of the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. So I regularly evaluate the projects that are on the pipeline. And also I am conducting a research about the lessons learned from the last 3 years in the region. And we are expected to have to share the publication during next year. The third initiative that I want to share is IMM Latam. So I met Lucia Casanovas and Flavia Tinelli in the Oxford program. Lucia is from Bolivia and Flavia is from Argentina. We connected immediately and we share this spirit of sharing the knowledge and promoting a culture of impact measurement in our region, because we know how much we need to do that. So we gathered this year at the beginning and we were planning different activities in order to do that. And we started by doing a series of webinars, invited experts from different parts of the world to talk in Spanish about projects, about practices, about approaches. And we have deployed 3 webinars this year, and we are planning the coming year to see if we are gonna keep on doing the same, or if we are able to implement a course that we are also dreaming about. And the last initiative that I want to share is a workshop that I opened at the beginning of this year. As I mentioned, I'm also a teacher, a professor at university, and I gathered that and everything that I learned and the program in Oxford. And I opened a workshop free in my LinkedIn. I was calling for 2 initiatives. At the end, 10 replied. I had to select 3 because I didn't have more time. And in the course of 3-4 months, we worked together in a methodology that was focused to work in a collective and efficient way to make it more accessible for everyone. Because here, we don't have many experts on this topic. And it's really like a huge barrier for organizations. So I was thinking, how can we do this more like democratic, let's say, accessible to everyone? So we tried this methodology for these 3 months and with a group of 10 people, with volunteers, and it was a very enrichful process. Each group had their own theory of change done at the end and validated by experts. And it helped me to adjust the methodology that I want to like do it for free or open access. So I'm working on that. That's an idea that is being developed. So after the program in Oxford, to be honest, I felt this drive to share what I've learned. The program opened my perspective, gave me a theoretical framework, the tools to apply, and a clear roadmap. It helped me also to understand in an organized way all the information about IMM that can really feel overwhelming. And at the end, it made me feel more confident on my own capabilities and my own potential to contribute to achieve more positive impact. I mean, having the opportunity to learn from and with the best researchers and practitioners on the topic is huge. Also, I wanted to share maybe some challenges that that you might also see in your own experiences. One from SOE, as I mentioned, is a do tank with a business mindset. So we are always like in a hurry to do more. And sometimes we don't have the time to stop and really think on or reflect on the impact that we are doing or the lessons that we can learn. So that's the first challenge, like how to introduce this kind of slow thinking in a very super fast business mindset. And I found that it's a process and that you have to communicate a lot at the beginning in a very strategic way and translate this in also business terms, which are more easy to connect. At IFAD, for example, there's another kind of challenges. I see are very robust impact measurement, but the challenge is to close the loop by reflecting on the lessons learned and incorporating that in the culture and in the processes. So we're working on a model based on economic behavior to see how we can introduce that in the culture. And in general, as I mentioned before, at least here in the region of Latin America, I see a lot of a lack of knowledge on the topic. There are not many like courses offered, but there is a lot of interest. For example, for these 3 webinars that we opened, we had over 300 people register to participate. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on the education area to promote this kind of approach. And then maybe just to end, I would like to share the importance of the network that you are gonna meet in Oxford. In my case, as I mentioned, being connected with Lucia and Flavia was kind of life-changing. And now we share not just professional projects, but also it's like a really good network to move forward on your own path. And as Cordell mentioned, I think there's also very important value on all the connections that they open to you and the knowledge that they also share. So I think that social capital that you are able to build there, it's also very, very important and valuable. I think those are the things that I wanted to share, Tonielle. I'm open to any questions.
Great. So yes, any questions that anyone has for Susie, please drop in the Q&A. And, I think it's really inspiring what you're saying about, being able to share those resources and impact measurement, specifically with where you are in the global south, and where being able to share that knowledge, but not only that, being able to connect with people that are in various parts of the world near you, that have gone through the similar experience and are facing those those challenges of exposure to the data, really, and the knowledge and the frameworks, and to being able to share that with your community is so vital and inspiring. So I guess the only question I have for you is sort of similar to Cordell's, what advice would you give? But really just what advice would you give anybody that is maybe planning to apply, but, in preparation for the program? Like, it's a very intensive week. So how did you feel that it was best to prepare before your arrival?
Well, it's a really good question. And it was funny because Cordell used a phrase that I also wrote down before, like, just do it. Because sometimes we try to find like the perfect moment, but not everything sometimes takes in place. For example, in my case, I was like a few months, just moved back to Lima. I had a little girl from 1 year old, and I was starting a new job. So it was not the best scenario at all. But somehow the things ordered. I had a lot of support of my family that helped me in that process. So I would say if you have these kind of variables, also look for support and trust the process. If it's meant for you, it's gonna be.
No, absolutely. And I would say from the Oxford perspective, we do get quite a lot of people that come here with their families, and we're happy to support those people as well, especially if you're traveling from a distance. So thank you so much, Susie, for sharing what you're working on with us. And again, if anybody has any questions that they want to drop in this Q&A, we can always pick those up as well. So I'll now hand over to our 2023 Impact Investing alumni, Ed Garrett, to introduce himself and tell us about his work. Over to you, Ed.
Thanks, Tonielle. Thanks, Cordell, Susie. It's great to hear from you, and so much of what you've said has resonated with me and brought back some incredibly happy memories of the course and the week that I spent in Oxford. So I hope there's where there is a bit of repetition here, that's actually just reinforcing the messages that you've already heard about how valuable this course has been. So as the screen says, I'm the head of private clients at CAF. We are one of the largest charities here in the UK. We're a donor advised fund, which means that we're effectively an institutional asset manager and allocator on behalf of donors, charitable donors. I tend to look after the individuals, the ultra high net worth individuals who are looking to deploy millions of pounds to capital. We also look after corporate clients and all sorts of other kind of entities along that spectrum, but it's an alternative to them setting up their own foundation. We take on all of the kind of operating and regulatory burden of managing charitable assets, navigating the compliance side of it, and investing the assets, given the sums that we're dealing with for growth, but increasingly for impact, which I'll come on to, and ultimately helping them to deploy philanthropic capital for impact into the around the globe. So we work really, we deployed capital in about 115 different countries last year, just over $1 billion last year. So my journey to CAF, I think, is worth touching on because that's really what drew me to kind of apply to do the impact investing course. I didn't come from a finance background. I had worked for an impact investment consultancy prior to working at CAF, but very much in a fundraising and operations role. And actually, the investment side of what we do at CAF was completely new to me. And I found myself having quite a lot of responsibility for something that I really wasn't that familiar with. And so that was what drew me to the impact investment course in the first instance. And I think Susie articulated it well. It was a way, I saw it as a way of being able to cut through a huge amount of complexity and volume of information that I simply wasn't going to be able to do on my own. And I didn't have the time or the luck to be able to go back and actually do a formal education, a longer standing education. So this executive course was the perfect kind of off-the-shelf, easy access way to bring myself up to speed in terms of an area that was hugely important to my role. I guess touching on my role, I kind of explained we look after assets and we help people manage those assets and then ultimately come up with strategies to deploy them. So my work and what I've taken away and how I'm using the knowledge that I've gained on the impact investing course really falls into three key areas. So we've got a balance sheet, a pretty significant balance sheet of about £1.5 billion that is invested in the markets. So a huge part of my job and a project that I've been working on for the last 18 months, really since being on this course, is driving the new iteration and wording of our investment policy. And we're on a journey as an organization from being quite a traditional charity or foundation. And in the UK, there's been some changes in the last couple of years about the flexibility that charities have for investing their assets with impact. Again, something that I learned more about on the course and pointed me towards deeper research that I needed to do. Giving me the kind of tools and equipment and the knowledge to navigate those quite high-level strategic conversations and ultimately influence much more senior decision makers in my organization. That's a key part of it for me, because I don't make a lot of the decisions myself and rely on that influencing, and that was a knowledge set and a confidence and a skill set that the course really enabled me with. At the higher level, where I do hold the pen a lot is in terms of some of the individual deal making that we do. So we, as a direct outcome of the course, and again the knowledge and the skills and the understanding I gained of the marketplace, have been able to drive us forward to doing some much more complex impact investment deals, and using some alternative financial structures that we haven't done as an organization before. So one example, which we're working on at the moment, and actually completely materialized out of the network that I gained on the impact investing course, and possibly the most active and most valuable WhatsApp group I've ever joined, is we're working on creating a debt facility for a NGO that's based in Switzerland, but that is working critically in South Sudan. And they had a funding gap between two major USAID programs. And we've been able to, as I say, structure, or we're in the process of structuring a debt facility that enables that organization to bridge the funding gap, to release unrestricted funds that they have elsewhere on their balance sheet for core activities and for innovating in new programs and our debt facility that we're putting in place will allow them to maintain the output that they've got in a really well-established program in one of the most crisis-hit areas kind of the world. So that really wouldn't have come to pass without the knowledge and the connections and the understanding that I gained on this course. And then the other place that I'm using the knowledge is in product innovation. So we're looking ahead to new funds that we might want to develop ourselves, or indeed how we're going to partner with other players in the market. And I keep on coming back to one really clear slide that is etched in my mind from the course about the mechanics of the impact investing market, and how important it is for every player to understand the position that they hold in the market, either as an asset allocator or an intermediary, being it to the asset-facing intermediaries or to the community-facing intermediaries. And as a donor-advised fund, we do actually cross over some of those boundaries. But having that understanding of which role we're playing at any one particular time has been really, really helpful in allowing us to innovate and to go forward with greater confidence into some of those deals that we're doing now. So yeah, it's been a wealth of knowledge. I wrote down a couple of words that Cordell and Susie both used, was the confidence it gave me to go and navigate some really complex situations, very, very diverse stakeholder frameworks that inevitably are working in the impact investing space because it is a new developing market. I think the network I've mentioned, is invaluable, and on its own, just access to that is something that has been huge. As I say, it's produced several deals that we've been able to do as an organization, opportunities that we've been able to present to our donors and investors that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. And I guess also just the resilience to navigate change. This has been something new for us as an organization, to be intentionally facing into impact investing as an opportunity. As I say, change that has been taken a lot of influencing of senior decision makers, but that's also been hard at times, because it's not always easy to be faced by challenges, and the reassurance of coming back to the course and the network and some of the content and the information that we've gained has been a real sense of that reassurance. I think has made me more resilient in helping to keep going through those challenges. Inevitably, and you know, that's one of the first things that we were taught on the course, is that impact investing is all about solving really thorny problems, and so that resilience and finding allies to work with, and sometimes to go back and sense check with that we're doing the right thing, has been a really key kind of asset for me as we've gone along. And I actually was looking at the output from one of the recent courses, as people posted on LinkedIn to say they'd been there, and someone posted a comment which really struck me, was something that I heard a lot as well. And I walked away from the week in Oxford thinking a couple of years ago, which is, this is my tribe. I haven't really known before who it is I wanted to work with. I've gone through several different industries to end up where I am. But this is it, the impact investing community that walked out of that room, and be they from the charity sector like myself, or from the kind of private equity space or the institutional space. You know, I'm still in contact with people from BlackRock. I'm in contact with people from Save the Children in Uganda. I'm in contact with private consultants working in Colombia and South Sudan. And that diversity of tribe, who are all focused on the same really positive outcomes and positive outlook of how we can influence change, has been absolutely incredible. So I hope that gives a fair oversight of kind of what I took away from it all. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Thank you so much, Ed. I think there was some conversations around my next question as well, which is really, you know, you had mentioned about how the network was incredibly helpful, and that you found more useful connections, you know, in this WhatsApp group, and the valuable insights there. So do you find that the transition to impact investing was difficult without that finance background? And would you say that you had to rely on the connections and networks to sort of move you forward into that? I know there was a few questions, and Cordell has answered as well in the chat, that were centered around this very thing. And he had mentioned it was an asset to not come from a traditional finance background. So how do you feel that affected your transition?
Yeah, 100%. It's this course turned it into an asset. I think the nature of the impact investing market and some of the concepts that we picked up on the course, the spectrum of capital, the idea of 3D investing, then whether you come from a finance background, or whether you come from a charity background, or you come from you know, an impact measurement background, the concepts, and that's one of the most exciting things, is this is really genuinely at the cutting edge of finance, of social science, of all of these different things. And so but particularly, I think, not from a finance background, it feels incredibly difficult to break into that world, because you don't understand the acronyms and you don't understand the language, and you can feel quite overpowered by some brilliant minds that already work in finance. But being given that sense of place, and understanding that there is a role to be played from a diverse kind of perspectives, and Cordell mentioned, you know, how much importance there is in impact investing on diversity and equality and inclusion, and justice. And having that sense when you're not from that background, I think is really empowering, and it's enabled me, you know, Cordell said the same thing, to have the tools to enter new conversations, to go in, and now I feel like I can, you know, it's set me on a path. There's been a lot more research, there's been a lot more learning, and more studying since, but now I feel able, even without that background, to kind of hold my own, and to sit down with institutional investors and justify to them why we can do a good job and deliver value for them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so important to be able to sort of merge those connections. And you know, I think when you have an Oxford program behind you, to say, yes, I am actually qualified to talk about this, and this is how I can help you move this forward and scale. So yes, thank you so much for sharing your stories and what you're working on. So it looks like there is a question directed to you, Ed, in the Q&A. Do you want to answer that, or would you like to talk through it now? It says there are concerns about some investment companies with respect to predatory lending practices in developing countries with weak governance systems driving the debt crisis. Do you weed out those companies to avoid whitewashing predatory practices?
I'm going to sidestep the question slightly and lean on some of my media training that I've done recently and focus in on what we're a charity. So our capital that we steward is 100% philanthropic. And that's the lens at which we come at all of this, even when we're investing. And so there has to be a charitable output and charitable purpose behind any investment that we make, and ultimately the investee company or the beneficiary or the NGO that we are getting money to. And so for us, the benefit of that is we steer so far from perhaps some of these riskier edges of the investment world and the private equity space where it's not quite that clear cut. Now, that's not to say that the charity world is not free of these risks. There are still frauds, and there are still people looking to manipulate any marketplace. But I think that, again, one of the core concepts of impact investing that you walk away with is the understanding around intentionality, and the ability to understand that and seek it out and to do proper due diligence on the positive intentionality of what investees or recipients of funding are doing. I think keep us quite a long way from that line that this question is focused on. And yeah, I don't really have enough knowledge of it to comment on what the risks are in that particular area, but pretty sure that we're steering well clear of it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ed. Thanks for answering that. Any other questions that you have for our panelists, please drop into the Q&A. And hopefully you've had a chance to scan those QR codes so that you can connect to them to further your conversations. So I just want to say a big thank you again to Ed, Susie, and Cordell for sharing your stories with us today. This is the second in a series of webinars that we are doing for alumni impact professionals that have participated with us. And we're hoping to continue this series. So keep an eye out for the next one, which will be in March of 2025. We have not yet confirmed the date, but we will send you, if you've registered, we'll keep you updated. So if you're thinking of applying and would like some guidance, you can join myself and Carrie on December 12th. So we will be having another 30-minute webinar going through the application process, top tips, logistics, and to answer any of your questions. So if you want to join us, the QR code is there. So this is how to ace your impact finance application. And hopefully the advice provided by Cordell, Ed, and Susie has been really useful for you in preparing for that journey. So thanks again for taking the time to join us, and our contact details will be on, our next program's running. We've got the Impact Investing Program coming up in February. I believe there are a few places left on that program now. So if you do want to apply, those are the dates. We've also got our Oxford Impact Measurement Program next running in June. Applications for that have opened now, and scholarships will be considered for full-time NGO participants. So any details that you wish to have on that will be open for the month of February. And then our Impact Finance Innovations Program will run once more in November of 2025, and the dates are there. So that QR code there will bring you to our impact page where you can have a few more details. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to Carrie and myself. These are our contact details. We'd be happy to book a brief virtual call to discuss any questions you may have. So hopefully, we are always happy to connect, and we hope to welcome you in Oxford at one of our upcoming cohorts. So with that, I will wrap up, and then I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week and look forward to the Christmas holidays. And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.